My name is, hello everyone, my name is Jason Bosch, and this is If We Were Honest. And today I've got a very special guest. Her name is Cory Morningstar. She is a independent investigative journalist, writer, environmental activist. She focuses on global ecological collapse and political analysis of the nonprofit industrial complex. She's from Canada, and she writes on The Wrong Kind of Green, which is a great site with a lot of great articles. And her own personal blog is The Art of Annihilation is the website. And she also writes on Counterpunch and a few others. So hello, Cory.
Hello.
So tell me, so I first learned about you from, I came across your, I think it was a 4-part series, or it might have been more parts than that, but on the nonprofit industrial complex.
It's a lot of parts. I'm not, do you mean the one on the manufacturing of Greta Thunberg, or do you mean?
No, this was before that. Yeah, it might have been multi-part. Was it, how many parts, how many parts was it? It's been a few years since
I've done lots of series. Anyway, thank you for having me, by the way.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. I've been writing, I write about different NGOs. Basically, I've chosen ones that seem to have the most impact, right? Like there's always the foundations in the background, and I tend to focus on the ones that are at the forefront that deal with citizens, because those are basically the ones that are in charge of more of the social engineering aspect to bringing people on board. So I've done a lot of work on Avaz and the for-profit PR arm of Avaz, which is Purpose. I've done a lot of work on 350.org. I've done a lot of work on the Greta Thunberg marketing phenomenon. And yeah, I'm sort of all over that, like the NGOs more so than the foundations, although it's all basically one system, all tentacles of ruling class, all tentacles of corporate power, capital. Yeah.
And so what was it that led you into all of this? Were you an activist before and started to question things, or how did you, what was your path?
Yeah, I mean, I was an activist in my community on the ground for many years. And so actually a lot of these groups I was closely not affiliated, but working with, in contact with, discussions, dialogue. And at one point, I think it was it takes a long time to learn. I mean, way back then I was winning what were, praised and recognized by other people and, establishment people as big successes. Like for instance, we had the first bottled water ban in Canada. Anyway, we had different successes, but you begin to realize after a while that it's all so futile. I mean, if you're not going after the system itself, these changes are more symbolic than anything. And a lot of it, as much fun as I was having, as much as especially that sense of community, it's really rewarding. But at the end of the day, if you're not really changing that much, you need to reflect and step back a bit. And then a big change for me was right before I went to Copenhagen in 2009, I guess, and I was working with all these different groups. This campaign called Tick, Tick, Tick sort of took over everything at that time. It just sort of swallowed everything up and everyone. And I started asking, I was in a listserv, and I started asking a lot of questions on that. And I had, I had, what's the name for it? I had the accreditation to get into that function at what was that, COP15 through the Tick, Tick, Tick. And then right before I was to go, they said they no longer had room for me, and I couldn't go. And this was after I had already booked my ticket and everything else. So anyway, I went anyway, and I happened, not even knowing if I'd get in, but I did, to the conference. And I guess from there on in, I really began to look at things a different way. And I started asking why we were never asking the right questions and why we were never using the actual science. Like what we were doing was not reflecting on the actual science in the papers. And so that's when I stepped away and thought, I'm going to start really analyzing this more, looking at that. And then I guess I came to realize that that was more important, far more important than what I was doing. And because I wasn't employed by anyone, I could really write freely. And I just dived in as I began to learn about the whole system itself and began grabbing onto other people's work that I could, sort of had an understanding where to begin. And I've just been building on that for the over the last decade. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I have a similar thing. I was running a documentary film festival and trying to raise awareness of different issues, and a lot of the, and then going to anti-war protests and everything, and then just after a while it wears on you, and you're just like, we're not doing anything, we're not accomplishing anything. If anything, we're going backward. And in spite of everyone's, there's tons of money that's donated to nonprofits every year, and volunteer hours that people put in. And then even the documentaries that I would show, it would be like some nonsense. It never had any substance in terms of like a real concrete plan of action to stop this. It was like, oh, make a donation, write your congressperson or whatever. And I'm just like, and it got to the point where I'm like, this is going nowhere. Like, and that was what led me to start to look into the role of the nonprofits presently and historically,
Yeah.
in basically creating the system that's creating all the problems in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you started out with Art of Annihilation, and I thought, like, uh, you had some issues where after a while where you weren't able to get your stuff published, right? On Art of,
Oh,
you would post on Art of Annihilation, and you couldn't.
yeah, that's just this year. I mean, there's been a lot of censorship happening lately, as I'm sure you're well aware. I mean, it's not new, it's just intensifying. And so this year, I just one day noticed that no longer anything from that whole website can be shared on the Facebook platform. And I mean, I actually hate Facebook, but if you want to reach out to people and if you want to share information, that's where everyone is. I mean, there's other platforms too. I'm also on Twitter, which I also hate. But yeah, I mean, it's like a double-edged sword. Right now, that's where everyone is. So if you're not, it's really more difficult to get your work out there if you're not on at least one or two platforms. But then it becomes really difficult trying to balance your writing, which requires massive amounts of research, and then then to be help working, putting up stuff on Wrong Kind of Green, on doing Facebook posts, Twitter comments, research, right? And then you're trying to have a life, right? Real life, and you have all these other responsibilities in real life, obviously family, homes, and then you want to be outside, right? So it's really sort of really difficult to try to maintain any semblance of balance at all. But yeah, that's what it is. And so yeah, back to the question. So Wrong Kind of Green is still up. Everything there is still available by link on that platform. But yeah, the other ones, nothing can go on to Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy times we live in. But your articles are quite intensive, and the research that clearly has gone into that, because a lot of articles will just make a statement, oh, such and such is happening. Even mainstream articles don't back up their stuff as much as you do.
No.
And another person that I've been doing stuff with is Allison Haver McDowell. And same thing, it's like, these are the sources. You can actually go there and look for yourself and see that what I'm saying actually has legitimacy. And it's really rare, but the problem is, like, people don't have the, I don't know if it's not that they don't have the time, but they don't take the time to actually roll up their sleeves and actually delve into this work. And you operate in the medium of writing, which it probably makes it more difficult. What are your thoughts on that in terms of getting the message out?
I guess people do have, I shouldn't say everyone has time to read. I mean, a lot of people really struggle with time, especially if you have to have one or two jobs to support your family. A lot of people that do have time, it's spent now engaged on either social media, like sharing nonsense, or it's consumed by Netflix and like gaming, video platforms, all that stuff designed to sort of suck people in and keep them there. And so that's, a barrier to getting people to read. I mean, the nonprofit industrial complex itself, NGOs, are very problematic in the way that as individuals, as parents, as members of our community, we all have a responsibility to be aware of what's going on and to fight back and to but really engage in these things. And what's happened, the NGOs have given people a false sense of security. People now think, oh, well, I can give whoever, Greenpeace, 20 bucks and they're taking care of my interests, and they don't understand that Greenpeace is embedded with the very corporations destroying the planet. Greenpeace basically things to protect. So they're really, it's all just an arm of one apparatus. And so that's the problem. What are my thoughts? I don't know. I mean, it's getting more and more difficult. John Stepling writes a lot about this. It's getting more and more difficult to get people to read because everything now is sound bites, right? And we're actually training people, engineering people to not be able to read past, one or two paragraphs, so it is getting more difficult. But then again, there are people who do the work and do the reading. And I mean, what more can we do? We just have to keep hoping that people will realize how important everything is that's happening. And yeah, they'll start to do the work.
Yeah, I'm a video guy myself, and I would actually much rather watch a video than read. But I make myself read because I know there's content there that I can't get on a YouTube video, and I kind of force myself to read. It's there's a physical. So sometimes it's like, especially when you're something really long, that's like going into a lot of detail, it's hard. I think our brains, our attention spans are not trained to sit there and focus on one thing for any extended period of time because we're so, there's a really great book. I forgot the title of it, about just what the internet is doing to our brains. Yeah, but you're still here. Allison is still here doing that work, and I'm quite impressed. And so you're now your stuff is now largely on the wrong kind of green. It seems like that's where you're posting a lot of your stuff.
My stuff's usually too long to put on other websites. Like if I make short pieces, usually I can get them put on, Counterpunch or Off Guardian or wherever, but usually they're a bit long and intensive because I usually add a lot of images and screenshots, videos that support my work, or, it's easier for people to absorb the information if there's some context of where it came from and that type of thing, rather than having to go look at all the links, like you say. So.
And there's a creative, it seems like there's kind of a creative aspect to the way you do it as well. Would you say that you kind of, there's an art about what you do as well?
I'm definitely, I think the aesthetics is very important, and keep it really clean and that. I mean, I try my best. People complain about it, and they do sometimes complain about the length, but I mean, it's actually, I try to say, look, it's a gift. I've done all the work. You don't have to do anything. You just, grab a bottle of wine, go sit in the corner, read it, read it at your, just on your own time. So that's, people don't really realize sometimes 2 paragraphs can take, 2 days, it's a lot of research to do this kind of intense journalism that
Yeah.
I and others do. So yeah.
So, and then, I don't know, what is it, like about a year ago when you came out with the articles about Greta?
Yeah, I started working on those in 2000, I guess January 2019. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And I can't remember when the first one came out. I think that month, or maybe I started working the last couple of weeks of December. I can't remember. But yeah, and when those came out, I mean, people were very, very resistant to anything that went against that narrative. And so it really took a while to break through a wall. But then once that wall was broken through, more and more people started to reading it and understanding what was happening. So yeah, and even that the whole volume is all available for free on the web to read. I don't think you should have to pay for knowledge. The volume 1 is made into a book, just like someone I work with. It's all like people volunteering and everything. It's available online. And then volume 2, I think I've published 6 segments for volume 2. And then I know 7, and there's 3 or 4 more left. So I've got a couple things right now I'm doing, and then I'm going to come back and finish that. Yeah.
And just for people that are watching this, just in a few sentences, what's the gist of it?
The gist is basically the fourth industrial revolution is rolling out. That's being rolled out under the term, basically a phrase that you'll see now everywhere, the Great Reset. Everything's basically feeding into this narrative. The same corporations behind all this control all the media. They fund the entire nonprofit industrial complex. They fund academia. They fund science. Basically, it's a consolidation of power that's just keeps consolidating, and it's happening in real time right before our eyes, but we're not really seeing it because of all the different discourse. I mean, we're just led away. Every time there's something we should be looking at, we're sort of led away and end up looking somewhere else, and that's deliberate. And so I guess in my writing, I'm hoping people will come to recognize on their own the things I write about, and how this whole system works, and it all works in servitude to capital, and it all works in servitude to ruling class, overseeing everything. It all works to protect and expand the current power structures. Like Klaus Schwab, the founder of World Economic Forum, right now, what they absolutely need to keep going in the direction they want to go, they need the social license to operate. And they all know that. And to continue the plundering of the planet like they've been doing, they need that social license. If people were to revoke their social license, that means that means a class war. And that's what they don't want. So right now you're hearing all these terms: thrive, thriving, reimagine, imagine, inclusion, like all these terms to basically make you believe that your interests will be served. It's a new chapter, stakeholder capitalism. You're going to have more say in everything happening. You're going to help to design this new world, but it's actually just a rebranding of the old world, but even worse than it was before. Because now the new world is based on the capture of data, and basically, as you know from Ellison's work, commodifying humans and nature. I mean, right now, a big part of what's missing out of the Great Reset picture, people are really, beginning to see what this is, but what's missing still is the financialization of nature, which is just around the corner. And that is basically assigning a monetary price to everything in nature that right now is free. And
And doing it under the guise of protecting nature, which is even more
absolutely,
obscene.
exactly. Like the campaigns are voice for the planet and New Deal for Nature. They're both from the World Economic Forum in partnership with the World Wildlife Fund, who's guilty of all kinds of human rights abuses. Also in collaboration with the Climate Reality Project, Al Gore, who works with, who has Generation Investment with David Lied from Goldman Sachs. Yeah, basically, that's a huge part of this as well. What you'll have nature, those that have destroyed our planet will now be the stewards of the planet, and they will own what hasn't been destroyed. They will enclose what hasn't been destroyed. Nature will be bought, sold, and traded on Wall Street. And I mean, as soon as you monetize something, you're objectifying it. And we know when we objectify something, it makes it all that much easier to destroy it. So that's a huge part of it. We're working really hard to try to get people to resist that and become aware of that.
Could you say that one last line again? You kind of broke up, but I thought that was a really powerful line about when we objectify nature, it makes it. How did you word that?
Yeah, like basically their argument is capital only recognizes assets, right? So we have to basically, capital only recognize what's commodified. So we have to commodify nature for it to be protected. So basically when you do that, you're objectifying it. And I was just saying, when you objectify something, that makes it, that when you objectify it, then you can easily destroy it. So this is the direction we're headed in. And it's so, sorry, I'm going all over the place.
That's okay.
It's not about ecology, okay? It's not about protecting the planet. It's not a new deal for nature. It's another deal for billionaires. It's a corporate coup of the commons. Like, this is the biggest corporate coup in the world. So right now, GDP is worth around, I don't know, $90 trillion. Once this new system comes into place, in their minds, nature is valued at 125 trillion. Nature services, what they call them. And so instantly you magically create an additional 30-40 trillion dollars right out of thin air, magically appears. And like I said, it will be enclosed. They will own it. It's right out of their own mouths. Those money can buy nature, right? So yeah, that's where we're headed. We're taking the very same system that has destroyed the planet, and now we're applying it to nature. So why would we think that the very system that has destroyed the world will now save it? Like, you know what I mean? The very people that have destroyed the planet will now save it within that system that's based on infinite growth. I mean, it's all, people get lost in the branding and the framing, the language, because you can just bring it back right to that very basic thing that I just said. The same people that destroyed the planet will not be the same people that saved it. I mean, the biodiversity that remains on the planet has been protected by indigenous peoples. Now those peoples will be displaced more so than what's happened up to this point. So basically, these campaigns are a continuation of genocide of indigenous peoples that's been taking place already for centuries. So yeah, this is the direction we're going. It's all happening under the Great Reset, which is the fourth industrial revolution based on technology. And it's based on basically the fusion, the merging of humans with machine.
And one of my big things is just the real versus the representation. And we're trading the real thing for fictions. Money is a fiction. Contracts are actually just legal fictions. They're, the law is essentially fiction. And these financial products that they're now buying and trading and selling, and they can create them infinitum. I mean, because they're fake, it's just, and yet we're replacing the real, and just being able to draw a line in the sand and recognizing what's real and what's not real, and siding with life and siding with what's real, I think is what needs to happen, because people are being fooled in mass, and it's frightening.
Well, and that's the thing, like right before this happened, I mean, I wrote, and I've written about this for quite a few years, about the coming financialization of nature. And I always wondered, the monetization, I always wondered how they would do it, how they'd get people to be okay with that. And you'll notice in the campaigns, I mean, they're dripping in beautiful holistic images, and like the WWF videos, I mean, they have so much money, so they're just beautiful, right? And so you can't help, they play on that emotion, and you can't help but feeling drawn to that and sucked into their campaigns. But they actually never say what the campaigns are. It's just a new deal for nature, and then they grab all your emotion. You're like, yeah, I want a new deal for nature. It's so beautiful. I love this. Yeah. So anyway, right. But I was saying, before this happened, the whole COVID thing, I mean, I thought I'd have a lot more time to write about the fourth industrial revolution, because that was one of my pieces in my first volume of that series. And within that, I wrote a bit about it and said I'd get back to that later, but I didn't realize it was gonna all of a sudden be on us like this, via COVID, right? Using COVID as catalyst. And prior to that, it was again the finance. I mean, we were up to 253 trillion in global debt. I mean, that doesn't get paid back. So I agree with you about the fiction. I mean, he's paying back 253 trillion dollars. How much is that? It's and most of that's corporate debt, right? A huge whack of that. So it's just, now, I mean, the markets are so saturated with capitalism in the West with nowhere to go. Everything under the guise of climate is going to roll out in the global South and Latin America, like not so much here. So infrastructure under the guise of climate emergency and all that, that's mostly going to roll out global South, South Asia, not so much here. I mean, the US has already said even though the Paris Agreement is a suicide pact, it's not a real agreement to actually, cut down global emissions. But the US, at least a year ago, said they were more than halfway there, and the EU says they're way beyond their commitments already. So if people are sitting back waiting for some sort of Eden to magically appear, I mean, that's just not going to happen. You're going to see smart cities, right? And that's all about surveillance and data and all the rest of it.
What I appreciate about you is the fact that that you are an environmentalist, and you are coming at this from a care for ecology and a care for human life. I know it's interesting how people will pick up on different people's work with their own kind of spin on it, with their own kind of agenda. And there may be some alliances, but there's also like maybe some disagreements about, like, say, climate change, for example. And I've been frustrated because it's like I'm either on the side of the environmental movement, which is this largely a fiction, or the free market, like libertarian side, which doesn't do enough, I don't think, to acknowledge the ecological damage that's being done by the system. It seems like they want a more stable money system, and they want to have
Yeah.
more markets, more free trade, and so there's not many places for those of us who kind of are in the middle of, like, who are concerned about, like, government overreach and authoritarianism, and are also concerned about ecology and concerned about protecting the commons. So it's this push and pull between the individual versus the collective, and ecology and the planet, and trying to find a spot in there where you're acknowledging all of this stuff. And that's what I appreciate about you, because it's, and Allison as well. There's what are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree with you. And I find it really frustrating when I get a lot, okay, we'll just say far right, whatever, sharing my work. And I mean, good. If they read it, good, because I hope, that my position, I mean, my main focus is on ecology, more than anything. That's what's most important to all life on Earth. I mean, it's obvious. So I guess, I mean, the left, those I identify as left, they're the ones that should be seizing the work and running with it and using it, right? That's what it's for. It's knowledge to empower people. But they resist it. They don't want to see it, they're caught up in this nonprofit industrial complex. All the NGOs have sort of sucked up all that, all the activism and everything that's there. I don't know. All I can say is that we're working to break through that all the time. That's the part I want to build on, getting people to come back to the light. Like we've been without all these things for millions of years. Even the fourth industrial revolution, the 5G technology, I mean, all the surveillance, it all runs through the mobile phone and the smartphone. I mean, we could just like a hammer, we could just smash them tomorrow just by getting rid of those smartphones. Will people give them up? I don't know. I don't have one, but I know people are crazy about them. They've only been here for such a short time. We don't need those, right, to have good, and I think most people will admit on some level that in many ways they don't contribute to a healthy lifestyle. I mean, we know what they do to other countries. We know what they do to other people, my brothers and sisters in those places. I have to mine the content for them. So we know what they do to our relationships. So anyway, there's just so much. But then will they get rid of them? I don't know. So it makes you wonder, like, how serious are we, right? And all these things. I know the more of this stuff that you can get rid of out of your life, that, like, honestly, the simpler the better. um I don't know, that's where I'm coming from. I don't know how to get people to to see that, but
Yeah. So wait until this
yeah.
interview is over.
Okay.
Everyone that's no, not you. Everyone that's
Oh,
watching this, watch the interview and then smash your phones. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah, actually, and then when we're talking about reading, right, lengthy pieces and everything else, doing this last piece I did, I think it's crazy. 90% of people accessing internet are doing it through a mobile.
Mhm.
So I can't even imagine trying to read one of my pieces on a mobile or anything that I read. I can't imagine reading it that way. So of course people aren't taking it in, right? Of course they're just looking at a little bit and, maybe in their minds thinking I'll read this later, and then, people get busy,
we
don't come
should
back to it.
we should create some audio versions of it where it's reading so people can listen to it, because a lot of
Yeah,
people like a podcast style or whatever.
definitely.
I mean, it's just kind of the way of the world. There was a book that came out in the 80s called uh, Amusing Ourselves to Death.
Yeah,
Neil
the postman.
Postman, yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like this is a continuation of that, of like this narrowing down of our field of ability to take in information and
Yeah,
process it. But and it's
that,
also interesting too how we measure our success based on technology. Like, oh, we have TVs, somehow like we're better because we have TVs, and I kind of think, I, a lot of these technologies have not actually made our lives better in terms of the quality of life.
yeah. I mean, I just recently, I don't know if I think I wrote something somewhere. Anyway, when I grew up, we just had a TV, right? We had an antenna, and you'd move this thing, and it would move around, and you'd have maybe 3 channels. It was just something you watched once in a blue moon, here and there, right? You'd have, I think I watched Bionic Woman or something. You'd watch maybe on the weekend. If you were even inside, you'd watch cartoons maybe in the morning, once in a while, a movie with your family. I mean, it was just not a big part of our life. And there was no computers and there was no mobile. You had the rotary phone on the wall, which I actually still have one of those.
Hmm.
And life was simple. And I really, really am so grateful that I grew up like that. I can't imagine now trying to navigate my children through all of this, right? And it's just so unhealthy. Children and youth, especially, struggling to find their own identities, and I just feel so badly for them.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine like having a life where everything you do is being monitored and calculated, and I mean it's completely crazy. Um,
Well, I mean, Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, everyone, I mean, they're really targeting the youth. They don't really care so much about us. I mean, we'll be gone whenever. The people coming up, especially young people now, that's their demographic that they're focused on. And in their eyes, these kids have grown up from the time they were born with technology, and they're really easy to bring into the fold. And it is really heartbreaking watching children become vehicles for their apparatus to roll out. Like, they're basically destroying the very earth beneath their feet. They have the children, the youth, destroying their own futures. I mean, that's how powerful it is what they do, their public relations campaigns, their media, their NGOs. It's all part of one machine.
and their language of actually changing what it means to be human is I think some of their taglines for some of this, and it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty terrifying statement. I mean, that's just they're out in the open, like, yeah, we're going to change what you are, what like physically or mentally or whatever. But yeah, it's so you have a new article that's coming out. It's not a social dilemma; it's a calculated destruction of the social. So you want to talk a little bit about this article that you've been working on?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I watched the documentary. What was that documentary? What's called The Social Dilemma. And, I thought, yeah, it's good, and then I think about, I'm always thinking, like, it's sort of like a sickness. I'm always thinking. And I was thinking about that for a while, but I wasn't quite, I wondered about it because I didn't really learn anything that I didn't already know. Um, but I can't really pinpoint anything bad per se about it, other than it was basically, but I mean, it's nothing new. They weren't going after the, structural components of the system, the economic system, or anything like that. But anyway, I can't even tell you now what sort of provoked me to start looking at things. But I did. And then I realized, that social dilemma, basically the protagonist of the documentary, Tristan Harris, I found him, and then I went and found that he had the Center for Humane Technology, and I started looking around what this is, especially tech for good. I recognize that term from the World Economic Forum website, and then I really dug into that. And then it turns out that Center for Tech for Good used to be called Time Well Spent. Then when I started looking at that, Time Well Spent partner turned into Time Well Spent Thrive Global, if you know what Thrive Global is. And I know what that is because they're really tied in with this already, with the fourth industrial revolution, selling that to the public is a really great thing. And so that really piqued my interest right there. And right away, as I started doing the research, it all just ties back to fourth industrial revolution. So basically what you have, like what Greta was to the climate movement, this is what this is the fourth industrial revolution. It's basically security, people to feel, yeah, we know it's dangerous, but we're really concerned about that too, and we're going to make sure that we take care of all these problems. And so it's like assurances to people of coming up really dangerous technology like autonomous lethal weapons. I mean, yeah. Anyway, it all ties back into there again. People will see it really quickly through the first section. Again, social engineering, conditioning, social license, behavioral change, right? Getting people to accept that these things basically, we can't stop it, so we'll just have to accept it and keep an eye on it. But, you know, be assured that there's lots of people over here that are, you know, working for you. And yeah,
And
anyway.
I noticed too, you look at these things, these different campaigns, and if you dig deeper, you find out that they're actually connected. So they have, I think you talk about coordinated media campaigns that are pushing a particular idea, and looking at the money that's behind that, and what are the motivations? Are the motivations purely that they want to make the world a better place, or is there something else going on, or there's some other agenda that's being served? The
I mean,
Go ahead.
the motivations are always capital, right? Serving capital. I mean, if you can make the world a better place within that frame, then fine, maybe they will. But basically everything's within a market solution.
Mhm.
So the solution, okay, for example, in the documentary, they actually include a good part, and it's about the amount of teenage girls committing suicide since the advent of social media onto the mobile phone, Facebook in particular. And then it's about, I think, another group a little younger than that, same thing, self-mutilation, self-harm, suicide. Well, at that point, okay, as a society, we have a social media platform. We don't need it to live. It's not improving our lives. Okay, sure, you can find, we've all met great people on social media. There's definitely, I'm not going to say that you can't ever, you know, it's absolute 100 bad. But if we have our children killing themselves and mutilating themselves, and, you know, becoming, even at that age, it's so difficult to navigate. If you have children suffering from this platform, then we just shut it down, right? Like that's the solution. But no, you don't, right? And then the film just goes on, and it's like, what happened to this? What about this part? You know, and that's, again, it's like the Madeleine Albright, you know, I call it Albright-esque, that you know, that sort of depraved belief that we think the price is worth it. Like if we have our teenagers and youth self-harming, self-mutilating, killing themselves, yeah, I don't think the price is worth it. Like this is
So
not,
real quick, I'll just jump in for those watching. Is
yeah.
Madeleine Albright was asked about the report that came out that they estimated over 500,000 children had died as a result of the sanctions against Iraq in the 90s after the Gulf War, and they said, "Well, that's a pretty high price. Do you think that's worth it?" And Madeleine Albright says, "Yeah, well, it's a difficult, something to the effect of it's a difficult, you know, thing to think about, but yeah, it's worth it." And so that's what Cory is referring to there. So
Yeah,
go ahead, Cory.
sorry. No, nothing. I just get so like mad about it. You can never, everything has to be, all solutions have to be within that market framework. So instead of not touching nature, not letting, you know, stripping corporations that destroy nature, the ones that create all the global emissions in the world, essentially, instead of stripping them of their corporate personhood and not allowing them to operate anymore, right? Taking over those, whatever it is, shutting down whatever harms humanity. We, you know, I don't, you know, you're gonna have to edit that
Well,
out.
I think a lot about the, you know, the Hippocratic Oath. They say, "Do no harm," and we're like, well, we can't not do the harm. I mean, that's just completely absurd that we're not going to not do the harm. But how can we, you know, maybe help things a little bit after the fact?
But I mean, we don't have to destroy nature to make, for, you know, we don't actually need Nutella to live. We talk about a climate emergency, and that, you know, people say, oh, the world's, you know, we have 12 years left, 10 years left. And I mean, I've heard that since I started way back in 2007 or 2005, whenever it was, working like a lot on climate. Well, if we only had that amount of time left, I mean, why are we still grinding up whole forests for Nutella? I mean, come on. So this stuff really like pisses me off. To save nature, we don't have to monetize it. We just don't have to touch it, right? Like leave her alone. Like these people even going back to monetizing it, and creating it, making it into an object. Like, these are biological living communities. They don't exist for our purpose. They exist for their own purpose. And so I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I guess what I want to say, if they can make a whole globe wear a mask, if they can make a whole globe believe that Greta Thunberg sat on the street and in one day, all these PR campaigns they have, if they can get billions of people to do these things quite easily, right, through their machinations, through everything that they own and control and fund, they can get people to care about nature. Right? It's they that, yeah, everyone should respect nature more and be far more cautious of everything they do. But they turn it around. They say it's us, it's the system, it's them, right? It's them maintaining the system. Schwab himself says we can't have anything but capitalism. So it has to be stakeholder capitalism, right? Rebrand it. It's bullshit, right? They need to keep this system intact, to keep their own power and class status intact. It's not that they couldn't change things if they wanted. The social engineering is amazing that they do on the populace, and people don't know, but there's social engineering now, right, embedded in governments all over the world. They have their own social engineering offices, behavioral change offices within the government. This is becoming a bigger and bigger part of our society, right? And I don't know if you looked at anything in my work about new power.
I'm not familiar with that, no.
Anyway, it's a huge, huge part of this, like behavioral change, social engineering, conditioning, even the masks. In my last article, I suggest, masks are work to dehumanize us. That plays part, what's coming, this merger of machine, this fusion of humans and machine, right? So I go on into that a little bit. Anyway, just
you used a term in the article too that struck me, and you talked about data colonies, and I think of different types of colonizations that have happened historically, and this idea of colonies, like neo colonies based on data. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess that's a big thing too. That's one of the first things I found when I started looking about that movie and Facebook and that. And I can't remember how I came about it. Because there's so much happening in the global South and South Asia now. That's where all the capitalists, that's where they're focused. And so I started searching stuff about Facebook in Africa, and then I discovered that right now they're putting a huge, like the circumference of the whole planet, a huge underwater cable around Africa to bring Facebook there, and to basically, they're going to bring everybody on board to Facebook. And it's all youth populations that are coming up, like a massive youth. And so it really pissed me off when I started writing about that, knowing it's just like Al Gore and Generation Investment investing in the Greta series. I have a thing about Copa Solar. So they go into these communities where they have like literally there's nothing, right? Nothing. And they bring them in these packages of a solar panel, battery, and then a TV. And it's a package you'd buy on Amazon for probably $200, and they sell them these packages for these huge amounts of money. And then they set them up they pull them into a debt system, right? They're trying to recreate what we have here or there. And then all of a sudden and it's paid daily. Like if you don't get paid daily, it gets shut off. And so it's like,
Wow.
it's all done under, the guise of, it makes me sick. It's all done under the guise of, equality and bringing power to people that don't have it.
And the internet, talking about how like the biggest problem in the world is that people aren't connected to the internet.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, actually, we're into the fourth industrial revolution. We're just leaving the third, and we still have like huge amounts of people in the world without sanitation, without clean water, but they need Facebook. but they need Facebook, right? They need Netflix. Oh, it's just sickening. Like, oh, I can't, it just makes me sick. Um, oh, it makes me so angry. Sorry, it just makes me so mad. What else was I going to say about that? And basically, what they want. I mean, it's not about them actually being able to participate on Facebook or watch movies, right? Obviously, as you know, it's about revenue and advertising and creating, like, you know, just more billions and billions of dollars of profit, bringing all those people into their system. And then ultimately, SpaceX is launching satellites in the sky. Facebook's just during this month, like all this stuff not talked about in the film, during this month, or is it last month now, Facebook has put their first satellite up in the sky. So it's a scramble for Africa, right? And to bring all these people, 5G is basically the basis of the fourth industrial revolution, the basis of all this new technology they've got to put in place. And they want all the kids on digital education. And so, and I know I'm saying a lot, I'm sort of going all over the place, but if you go back, talking about the consolidation of power, in 2018, you had the World Bank, and they partnered with the United Nations. And then last June, you had the World Economic Forum partner with the United Nations. So you had the World Economic Forum in charge of implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, right? Those people, that sounds good. Oh, inequality, you know, equality, poverty, health, all these things. Well, if you look at the numbers, health right now, so you've got a graph and you've got all these different goals. I think there's 17, and then you've got them all, what, you know, specific, what's in each goal. And then if you look at health right now, it's just huge, right? It's just like way over here, everything else is here, and that's for vaccines, right? So the Sustainable Development Goals have to be recognized as emerging markets. It's not about poverty eradication, it's actually about a poverty economy. It's not about health, it's actually about vaccines. It's not about the climate, it's actually about monetizing nature. Okay, so people have to start to see this stuff through that lens. Like, it's not about, that's marketing, right? That's storytelling, that's PR. What it's about, and no one should be shocked, it's about money, right? It's about power.
And you talked about social license. You know, these companies are just trying to give themselves social license through branding and marketing. I'd like to read a quick line from your article.
Okay.
You wrote, humane is to tech what stakeholder is to capitalism, a rebranding exercise selling a kinder, newer, gentler form of oppression, exploitation, and misery. And I mean, that's essentially, you know, what we're talking about here.
Well, yeah, because I mean, the bailout that's just happened that no one's even seen because everyone's been hypnotized by COVID-19. Do you know what the number is? I don't even know now. Like, what is it? 10, 20 trillion? I have no idea.
I don't actually know.
Anyway, like you said, it's fiction. Who really cares? But we do know that all the billionaires' wealth has gone through the roof, as all the businesses, you know, all the informal sectors in the global South Asia, they've all been crushed, right? There's literally 30 million people right now facing actual starvation, you know, due to everything happening. So where was I going with that? So the oppression, sorry, there's so much in my head all the time. Sorry, what did you ask me?
Well, I was just reading an article about, you were talking about that they're using the term humane, and stakeholder. You know, is capitalism uses stakeholder
Yeah,
capitalism, and
just about
they have humane tech. You know, they talk about humane tech, but I think you were.
I did have it. Yeah, there's.
It'll come back.
It's not that it doesn't come back. Like, everything is so interconnected with everything else. It's obviously also interwoven,
Hmm.
that it's really easy when you're thinking of one thought. Like, there's just so much.
It
When
is
you do this
expansive.
amount, yeah, when you do this amount of research, like, there's just one thing doesn't mean one thing. It means actually 10 things, right? So, yeah, I don't know where I ended up going for that. But yeah, like without the social license, they, again, they know this. Without the social license, they can't operate, and that's, I guess, where I was going with that. You would think they knew they could do another bailout after 2008, 2009. Like, how people would go ballistic, like what happened before, right? But this time, because now no one's looking over there, everyone's looking over here, they've done it, and it's been no issue at all. I mean, I don't think hardly anyone's even talking about it. So they have done it. Otherwise, how could they continue now, right? How could they? Like, think about that. How could they continue now? There's just no way that they could retain their power. It's surprising to me all the time how so few people can maintain power over so many other people. Like, it's just, that part's really frustrating to me.
So to
And
talk about the, the way you worded it is leveraging COVID-19 waged
yeah,
as a weapon against the citizenry, which is, basically dividing us and putting us into these, you know, removing us physically from one another,
yeah.
and psychologically as well. And that people, I feel astonished that more people can't see beyond just COVID-19. They can't see how this could connect to anything else, or that there may not be 100% truthfulness being spread around it. You know, I don't know where I was going with that, but I think trying to connect it, trying to talk about the connection between COVID-19 and the fourth industrial revolution, and that there is in fact a very deep connection.
Well, I mean, COVID-19 is not everything is can. Michael Parenti does an amazing lecture on conspiracy theories. I'm not sure when it was done, in the 80s perhaps,
Well,
but
Michael Parenti.
yeah, it's on the Wrong Kind of Green website. It's up online. It's amazing, and everybody should watch it. It's like, yes, ruling class does conspire, to, strengthen their power, insulate themselves, everything else. Anyway, it's really good. Klaus Schwab, I was just saying that because anything that goes against the narrative gets framed, oh, conspiracy theory by all those embedded in serving capital, and then gets pushed aside. People are afraid, right? Because conformity is such a powerful tool, and it's weaponized against us, that power. And so people are afraid, right? Oh, I sort of think that, but yeah, everyone says that's conspiracy theory. I better stay over here where it's safe, basically, right? And COVID-19 is a catalyst for the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. There's no conspiracy. Klaus Schwab's the first one to say it. Not just him, McKinsey, all of them, right? Like everyone that sort of, maintains this huge class structure. They say it. I mean, it's funny to me that anyone can dispute it. It's amazing. I mean, they're actually can't believe how successful it has been, right? They'll say, in their own words again, things they thought would take 10 years have happened in 2 months, right? Like, they're just beside themselves with how good this is going. So yeah, anyway, I don't know what your question was.
Oh no, I was just basically, the question was just talking about the connection between COVID-19 and what's happening,
Yeah,
and that it can't, it's not just a coincidence. In fact, Michael Parenti, or is Michael Parenti, yeah, talks about conspiracy theory versus coincidence theory, and the coincidence involved in
right,
them just happening to have these plans set up, these all these
exactly.
programs for 10 years that quite frankly they admit they couldn't do, you know without things like 9/11, without things like COVID, or whatever the crisis of the day, real or created.
Before you ask me anything else, I just wanted to add to that a lot of people aren't aware of this either. That COVID-19 is a catalyst for the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. There's no conspiracy. Klaus Schwab is the first one to say it. Not just him, McKinsey, all of them, right? Like everyone that sort of, maintains this huge class structure. They say it. in March of this year, on March 11th, the World Economic Forum launched a COVID business task force with over 200 of the most powerful corporations on the planet. And that today is up to over 1,000 plus, like, I don't know, 500 NGOs and institutions, which I don't even think there's a public list of them. But that very same day, when they partnered with the WHO, the World Health Organization, and that very same day as well, they announced the pandemic, right? So yeah, it's just, it's all really quite blatant. And again, it all serves it. None of it has served people. I'd say it's been a nightmare. Amalia Shatala, like an amazing revolutionary Black activist in the States. I'm just trying to think of who he represents. I mean, he's an extraordinary, beautiful man. He calls it the white man's virus, right? Coronavirus, the white man's virus, and it is. I mean, it's been really heartbreaking to see people here who have comfort, who have food, who have some sort of they have finances still. And so there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of virtue signaling here, whereas literally in the global south for a long time now, it's just had huge repercussions, huge, right? With people literally starving to death, people being shot for not being masked on, like, massive, it's just unreal. And why, over a disease that, in the words of WHO, most people have mild to no symptoms, and then of course it's just all so blown out of proportion, and so many people suffered because of it and will continue to suffer. I mean, it's really sad, like how we can all be, they call it herding cats. It's really sad how we can be herded so easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How relevant do you think the election is? Or do you think that's a sideshow?
Oh my God, so irrelevant. Come on, it's so irrelevant. I mean, do you really think whoever, I always forget her name, Cortez, whoever, all the, and 350 NGOs are all behind Alexandria Cortez.
AOC, everybody just says AOC. But
whatever, okay, AOC. Hey, she has no power, right? The legislations come up from above. They're not invoked by the politicians. The legislations come down from the Council of Foreign Relations, from the people on top. That's who calls the shots. In countries like Canada, US, where we live under a corporatocracy, right? We're ruled by corporations. We have governments that serve capital. They are run by corporate power, right? The governments they stack the deck. Everything's stacked. Even all the NGOs are all stacked with Walmart and, all the, trying to think which one is it. I don't want to say the wrong NGO. It's NRDC maybe. Anyway, they're just stacked. Even military, right? They're stacked. Like what did George Carlin say? George Carlin.
It's a big club and you ain't in it. I don't know. He said so many great things.
He says that's it, right? Like he said it best. He says it best. You're not in it. It's a complete waste of time in our countries that are in service to capital expansion of these markets and in servitude to the ruling class. It's a waste of time. I mean, I can't really express it enough. Another person that does a lot of really great work and explains it really, really articulately is Stephanie McMillan. In her book, I think it's called Capitalism Must Die. Anyone could read it. 10-year-old can read it. So good. It's such an easy read. Like, I really, really encourage people to read it, just to feel more empowered and more knowledgeable about what the system is and what does work and what won't work and what will work.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to jump back a minute too, but from what you were talking about in terms of, the government not really being the ones calling the shots, and I'm always fascinated by my friends who are kind of more libertarian, and I consider myself libertarian in many senses, but to see it's just the government that's the problem, and everything that's wrong with the government is not it's coming from somewhere else. It's the lobbyists and these council,
Yeah, yeah,
these the power is not, this is and the way I look at it is like these politicians are like essentially managers, um and they're not really calling the shots, and I made the point that they don't write and often don't even read the legislation that they pass.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that should tell you everything you need to know. But this whole, it's really frustrating because it gets in these camps. You're like, oh, are you on the libertarian camp or whatever? It's like, um,
You don't have to be
what,
in any camp. Like it doesn't work. That's it. So, like the Green New Deal comes back from 2009. You can go to the United Nations website, find it. It's already written 2009, and back then too, they were already laying out the roadmap for the financialization of nature, which they talk about in a video. I forget his first name, the last name Steiner. You can find it easily on YouTube, Green New Deal 2009. It's just all this stuff is already done. It's in the works, right? And it's just like it's packaging, it's marketing, it's storytelling, bringing it out, all going back, how do we create more markets, emerging markets? How do we expand capital? Um, yeah, even healthcare, they talk universal healthcare by 2030, part of the Great Reset. It's already up there. Everyone can see it. It's not hidden information, right? And so on the back of UBI, again, storytelling sounds great. You'll get a free check every month, right? You'll get that, whatever, 1,100 bucks. What they don't tell you, a lot of services, a lot of people depend on, well, that's why they'll do it. They can save a lot of money on healthcare and everything else. These services that people now get, people that need them, and that will all be gone. And then you can pay for everything out of your big 1,000 bucks a month, right? Well, Gates and Musk and all the rest of them live these like massive, egregious lifestyles. Well, they talk about climate change, right? Like it's a joke, but it's not so funny because it's true and it's getting worse. And so, yeah, universal healthcare 2030, that's already well underway in design, right? So
and
by
people will celebrate. They're like, yay, we have a victory, and they don't know.
they don't know, and that's all driven by pharmaceutical companies, right? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, like whatever, MasterCard, they're all in it. It's at the beginning right now, public-private partnerships, but the goal, as Klaus Schwab says, global governance. They want it all, and they're on their way. I mean, that's what they're creating. That's what they're doing. So we need to wake up to this. Like, it's,
And
I
George Carlin said something that too. They want it all, and they're coming for it, and they're going to get it. And you know what? They're going to get it.
forgot about that. That's right. Yeah, he was very prophetic. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about blockchain and smartphones too, and the role that they play. I loved your line in there about that, how if people didn't buy smartphones, that they would give them away in cereal boxes because they're so crucial for everybody having.
Yeah.
And I've talked with Allison and others about the Obama phone and the role that that played in. We got to make sure everybody has their phone because that's how how this whole thing operates. And then there was a company I hadn't heard about, but this Iris Guard. You talked about Iris Guard and
Yeah. Yeah.
iPay. You want to talk a little bit about some of that stuff?
Well, I'm definitely not as immersed and knowledgeable in that stuff as Allison. I mean, when Allison started writing about that, I remember she was really frustrated that people weren't getting it. I said, Allison, like, people don't know what any of this stuff is. Like, I didn't know what any of it was. I'd be like, blockchain, what really, maybe I've heard about it, but what is that? Right. And so I had to really make an effort to figure out what a lot of this stuff was and start doing what Allison does. I mean, she knows that stuff like the back of her hand, like I know my stuff like the back of my hand. But anyway, the blockchain, and I think I have a pretty good understanding now from, studying Allison's work, and just it's a process trying to figure all that stuff out. Do you know it really well, all that stuff?
A little bit, not. I mean, I think there's a lot of layers to it.
Yeah,
I've been doing some work with some different Ethereum blockchain companies, and there's a lot of people like on the ground that are like really idealistic and want to use it for good, and then there's this financialization, this capitalization piece of it, and I think that there's a difference between like the few foundations, and then whatever central banking uses that they'll have for the blockchain. It's kind of
yeah.
one of those things where it's like a lot of people could use it for a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the people that have good intent would like it to see it used for that. But I mean, everything World Economic Forum and capital itself touches, it's just like coating it with a poison brush, right? So yeah, the blockchain. I mean, China already rolled out their blockchain in April, so they already have people going digital wallet and digital finance. I mean, I haven't researched that recently, but that's well underway there. And that actually represents a security threat to other countries, especially the US, right? Anyway, what were you asking me? So that blockchain project was that was part of the United Nations, I think the World Food Program that you're talking about in that article.
Yeah, you talked about the building blocks, and then
Yeah,
you talked about how they tested this out at refugee camps.
yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Um, well, one thing I found, it's very, very blatant. Every single thing you see on these impacts, and what are they called? Impact investing bonds, social impact bonds, impact investing. Every single brochure that you see is Black and brown children, right? Beautiful Black and brown children. There's no white children on these things. They're all Africa, India, right? Again, South Asia, Global South. Again, target markets. So these are just test markets. That one's rolling out on the iris scan, every single person. I mean, these refugee camps, I mean, and I guess that's a new industry, right? I forget the numbers in there, how many people are in them now. One, I think, is around 80,000. Anyway, they're actually like cities now. They've built huge grocery stores in these places where people shop. There's like, I don't know. There's not a mall yet, but that could be coming. Anyway, it's really crazy. Again, anything can be commodified, right? Especially at this late stage in the game. So the people, when they get their groceries, they go to the teller. And you have to wonder if these grocery stores were even built for this project. Like that, I don't know. But they go to and instead of paying, let me think how it works. So you get your eye scanned. They do a retina scan. And then, how is it? I think they do have a physical card that's been loaded with credit. That goes through a blockchain that they started out on this public blockchain, but then they created their own private blockchain. So anyway, that's sort of in the process of happening. That's an experiment, but it's all basically, that's what I mean by the data colonies. It's all about capturing that data and then feeding that data into to strengthen the artificial intelligence, right? And I don't know,
And also serve the human capital bond markets that are coming online, which if you want to learn more about that, I've done a lot of interviews with Allison, and she's done incredible research talking about how they can monetize and capitalize on poverty itself through human capital bonds and impact investments.
And so we've got the financialization, the commodification of nature, then we've got the commodification of people, right? With focus especially on children, and then we have the commodification of social capital coming soon. So things you enjoy, social, community, whatever, church, anything that can be quantified under social will also be commodified. So basically, yeah, every single thing will be monetized. I mean, when you think of institutions and people and that's the only way that's the only lens that they can even envision a world through. Why would we want them in charge of anything? Like it's actually quite depraved and detached and unhuman in every way. So
And you
yeah.
also talked about how we name things after what's being destroyed. And I've heard others talk about this this phenomena where we name weapons after native, give military weapons native. So some of these there's some other things that were named.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because as I was writing that piece, I kept coming across all these terms, obviously, especially cloud, because cloud, oh my Christ, that's got to be one of the best things I've ever come up with, because people literally think when you're using a computer, it's so clean, right? Like it's just your computer and there's nothing else, right? Because it goes to the cloud, which is beautiful and blue and white and invisible and clean and all these beautiful, connotations that you have thinking of a cloud, but nothing's further than the truth. And so this led me, this social dilemma story, which is basically storytelling. What they don't tell you, the biggest part, what they don't tell you on top of the data colonies to be produced in Africa and beyond, is the data centers themselves are going to be, they already are, they're going to be a huge, huge problem for us, for climate, for the greenhouse gas emissions. Massive. They will make aviation look like fucking nothing, right? No one has, I think very, very few people have any idea. And there's only a couple of scientists that have really put out quite damning information. And I've watched them in interviews where they've, said, people have asked them to be more direct. And they say, well, I was really attacked when I put that out. They are chastised just like people are, like, get back in line, get back to the narrative, right? And so the data server stations, every single trace of data created everywhere off of everyone's phone, everyone's computer, it all goes into servers, right? Everything. And I mean, I think people are going to be really blown away when they see how bad it is. I mean, I didn't even really know anything about this. It was I learned a lot from it. And it's really insane because this whole premise of a great reset and New Deal for Nature, Great Reset, climate emergency, it's all under the guise of caring about our environment, greenhouse gas emissions, protecting biodiversity, and it's actually everything being rolled out is the opposite, right? Like even 5G infrastructure is the effects on human life and all life. We don't even know actually what's going to happen, right? And we've had, they say, listen to the science, but only when that science serves capital. When scientists and doctors, over 400 against 5G, say, we want a moratorium, even that, somehow they frame that and get it put into the corner of conspiracy. No. Over 400 doctors and scientists have called on the United Nations, the WHO, the EU to halt this. We don't know how badly that can impact not just human health, but all health, right? We're gonna have 59,000 satellites in the sky by 2030 for this fourth industrial revolution. Does that sound like something someone would do that cares about ecology, about our planet? You know what I mean? It's just bullshit. right? And it's just like coated in layers, and it's just like painted with this beautiful green brush, you know, and just there's just so much storytelling involved, and it's just all it's so deceitful. um I mean, it's marketing, right? This is how it works. For some reason, people think, if just like people think it, well, if it's on the news, it must be true. Who said? No one said that, right? That's not true. People think, well, if NGOs, if everyone says this, it must be true. No, no, they're in the pocket of capital. I mean, the foundations in a lot of cases have created these movements. They don't just co-opt them. People all saying, oh, they got co-opted. No, they actually manufactured them, right? There's a lot of money, a lot of strategy. The resources are unlimited, right? And so, I mean, I hope that's sort of my contribution in my lifetime, trying to wake people up to how this works, you know, to recognize this, to see what you said, to see what's real versus, no, this is bullshit, right? Like, this is fake. This has nothing to do with real, you know, tangible, real nature.
When on the energy thing in your article, you write that Ireland is forecasting that 30% of their entire national grid will be earmarked for data center power consumption by 2028. And so I know you went along, you talked a lot about, you know, just the energy consumption involved with all of these data centers, and how, you know, again, it's just like, if you just look at it, you can see that this is a lie. They're lying about caring about the environment, because
Yeah.
that's not what you do if you genuinely cared about the environment. And there are certain truths, you know, that I'm naming my show If We Were Honest, and there's a lot of things that make me uncomfortable, because I know I don't live the lifestyle that I should be living to match what my values are in my head. And I heard somebody say something about um, when your thoughts and your words and your actions are all cut from the same cloth, that's kind of the where you want to get to to live a life of integrity. And I know I don't. And so a lot of stuff makes me uncomfortable, because it's, you know, I have to face certain things about myself. But I think it's important that we do that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we're all enslaved to the system. I don't think there's any shame in saying that. That's the truth. But we didn't design the system, and we didn't create it, and we certainly don't work to keep it intact, right? And that's the difference. And so you find those ways within a movement that, or within a system, that you're basically, I mean, who can leave it? Millionaires, right? Billionaires. It's very hard to work outside of the system. You know, you can only do the best you can do. Yeah, but this whole thing about even get touch going back just a step to what you were talking about, the energy consumption and 30% of the grid by 2030 or whatever that was. And that's another layer of that lie, is that the renewable energy being created and produced today, again, all dug from the earth to create all this. Something I had to learn. I have solar panels all over my house, right? Anyway, that energy, so they have people believing we're creating this, you know, massive industrial scale. Everything industrial scale is bad. So everything's being produced industrial scale. We're going to have all this green energy. Well, it's actually mostly nuclear coming. A lot of nuclear, carbon capture storage. None of that is ever touched upon by hardly anyone. So basically, you just keep producing the carbon and pump it underground, right? And that also with it has enhanced oil recovery that actually helps get oil out of places where the oil is dried up. So it not only increases oil, it's just business as usual. Keep burning, we'll pump it underground. And that renewable energy, that what is being produced by way of wind and solar, which have been still, you know, the people for the most part think, you know, still believe those are clean and green, even though they're not. Anyway, that's all going to the data server stations, these hyperscale data servers, right? And so even that's a lie. Why are we creating energy to feed to future data server centers? Well, I can't say that. Data server, hyperscale data centers, not server, hyperscale data centers is my voice. So, you know what I mean? That's deceptive. People think this renewable and wind that's being generated will replace fossil fuels. It's actually being gobbled up by Google and Facebook and Microsoft and all these places that are actually now building their own hyperscale data centers.
What's your thought on a friend of mine, Jeff Gibbs, made a film, Planet of the Humans, and it got a lot of backlash, which I'm sure you can relate to.
Yeah.
Have you seen Planet of the Humans, and what was your thought about that film?
I had, okay, so we shared that on Wrong Kind of Green, and I just added an excerpt about there's a tiny bit in the film about population, which I just wanted to touch upon because you have to be really, really careful how you look at that. If we want to adjust population, we should do that in the West because that's who is creating and using all the resources, right? So to say, because population groups like the kind, what is it, Population Matters, David Attenborough and Jane Goodall, who are faces of the World Economic Forum campaigns for the financialization of nature, they always package that as we need to look after the population down there, right? And it's always like, it's always Africa, right? If you look at Africa, there's hardly one child here is 30 children here is like one child there. That's not an exact number. I'm just saying that what they contribute to emissions and resource depletion is nothing like compared up here.
I think
So
you meant like one child there, 30 children there use the same
yes,
amount of energy as like one child here.
like consumption wise, energy
Okay.
wise, emissions wise, all of that. I'm just saying the scale is just so at opposite ends of the spectrum. It's just the wrong area to focus on, right? Like, and so it's just more discourse. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. I articulated that in a short paragraph people can read, and then with some different places they can go to see what I'm talking about. Stephen Cory from Survival International, and he works with a lot of
Yeah, they're
like,
anti-torture organization.
no, he's actually indigenous peoples,
Oh,
tribal peoples, and
okay.
so he does a lot of great work explaining that. Like he's really quite relentless explaining, and he's done some articles on Counterpunch just explaining why that is not true. Right? That's, forget about that. That's not true. So, I mean, I'm very, very quickly explaining something that needs a lot. That needs to be, you know, that you could talk to about for a long time.
It's a show in and of itself.
Yeah, and so anyway, aside from that, I thought it was a great movie. I know Jeff has worked on that for ages, like years and years and years. As long as I've known him, he's been working on that movie. And so, again, I think, you know, that expression, sometimes a picture's worth 1,000 words, you know, videos, you know, that people, it's a lot easier sometimes to get people to understand something in that format, right? When you can watch it and have it presented to you in that format. So yeah, good work, great movie. I'm just really frustrated because Michael Moore, every time I see him talk about it, he ends up, like, the whole movie basically is about the deception and false solutions about the nonprofit industrial complex. And then he's always trying to bring back, regroup everybody back into that same channel. Like he'll, you know, promoting AOC or Greta Thunberg or whatever. He's just trying voting, right? Get people again distracted by that vote. I mean, and again, I know I go all over the place, but okay, so Joe Biden, and not just another imperialist, this whole Green New Deal ideology, I would call it more than even a deal, this whole belief in this green growth, it's completely built on imperialism. I mean, where do all these resources come, right? Um, Biden's been after Nicaragua forever. I mean, right now, Nicaragua is under threat of a coup, just like what happened in Bolivia. Why are people that identify as left telling people to vote for Biden or Trump? Don't vote. Forget about that. Put your energy elsewhere, right? We have to destroy these systems. Like Stokely Carmichael said, I think his Black Power speech in the 1960s. If I wish I had it right in front of me. I mean, basically, our job is to tear down these institutions, right, that keep us all oppressed, not just for ourselves, but for our brothers and sisters all over the world. It can't just be for ourselves, right? Just as feminists have to, it's not about women here, it has to be about all women. So that voting thing makes me really crazy. Like, we have to tear down the system, not maintain it, right? Like, not support it. All that does is maintain it, keep it in place. It's not a solution, it's a dead end. It's a waste of time. Is Trump any better than Biden? Is Biden ever any better than Trump? They're both, it's all the same system. It's all one system, right? If Hillary Clinton got in, do you think we wouldn't be at war all over the world just how we are now? War is by far one of the biggest contributors to climate change. I thought we cared about the climate. How come we don't care about wars? Why do we elect people that, are war criminals or will, continue to fund war, right? So, yeah, these are all things that, just show we have a lot more learning to do, a lot more thinking to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful for you and the work that you're doing. It's been an honor to have this conversation with you. I would love to do this again sometime if you'd be up for it. I know it's not your favorite medium. I know you'd rather be writing. Actually,
Yeah.
you'd probably rather be just walking out in the forest and enjoying nature rather than even thinking about any of this stuff.
That's what I
Um,
would like to do. That's a goal. Yeah, that's definitely a goal.
well, we're here now, and it seems like this is the work that needs to be done, and I appreciate you doing that work. And yeah, thank you so much.
I appreciate your work as well. And thank you very much. And I'm sorry that I'm so all over the place. I just have a really hard time sometimes articulating because like I said, it's just everything's so interwoven and connected. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, well, we'll if you're up for it, maybe down the road, when next time you have an article coming out or you have some new stuff, and we can do this again. And I think it came off great. I think I think people will appreciate this. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All
Okay,
right,
over.
Cory, I'll be in touch, and yeah, I'll let you know. I'm probably gonna air this. I'm gonna edit it and then maybe air it like next weekend.
Okay,
And
I know I hope it was okay for you because I know I move around a lot
I
and
thought it
I
was great, actually. I thought it was
okay.
real. I thought the article coming out or you have some new stuff, and we can do this again. And I think it came off great. I think I think people. Hey everyone, thanks you guys for watching. I got to turn the volume down. My volume's all over the
Corey, I'll
place.
be in touch and yeah,
God, why is this not
I'll
working? Okay. Hey everybody. So yeah, I pre-recorded that because I didn't want to rely on Facebook and whatever kind of machinations they were going to be involved with. Hopefully you guys are all hearing my voice and seeing me. There's a little bit of a delay between the stream and what I'm seeing, so hopefully it's working. But yeah, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. I was really excited to have Cory agree to talk with me because I've been following her work for quite a few years, and well, a few years. I don't know, quite a few, but a few years. And there's very few people out there like her and Allison and some of the other amazing people that I've met this summer, that are just really telling the truth, even the truth that cuts to the bone. And I think that's what we desperately need right now is some serious truth telling. And so I wanted to just, real quick jump on here before I sign off and ask. I'm traveling. I've been traveling on my own dime, and I'm kind of running out of money. I'm almost out of money completely. But I'm down in um, I'm down in Texas here, and I still got to get back to Denver, Colorado. So if you would, if anybody's out there watching that wants to make a donation to help me finish up my travels, plus I still have more editing to do. I don't know if you saw the latest video um, that I posted, but I've got a lot more content coming your way soon as well. So I don't know if Facebook is still streaming me. Can you guys make a comment if you're seeing me on Facebook? Because I'm not. Anyway, I'm going to leave in the comments. My email is argusfest@gmail.com. If you want to donate, you can just PayPal. I'm taping it right now. Um, that's my email, and you can just PayPal me if you want to make a donation. And thanks again. I'm going to be taking clips out of this and eventually, eventually putting something more comprehensive together. Um, but I'll keep content coming your way. And thanks again, everyone. Much love.